That's it. Okay, I think that from home you can hear me, right? And also down there you can hear me as well. So first of all, nice to meet you, because on my side this is the first time that we officially met. I think that you saw some of my announcements, and then through the first slide where Professor Buganza was presenting us. I'm Silvia Gadola. I'm one of the teaching assistants within this course. Then in the next couple of weeks, you are going to meet also Professor Martina Legnani and Lucio Cosi. So you will have the chance to meet them. The lesson of today is basically dedicated on trying to take a look at one of the other main ways in which it's possible to drive innovation within organization. So the last week you saw both technology innovation, right? And technology-driven innovation, but also innovation of meaning. Am I right? And within innovation of meaning, I know that in a way or another you touched upon some other concepts, where basically today we are going to wrap up all of them in two macro, let's say, aspects of innovation, where one is the market pool innovation, and the other one is instead the technology epiphanies. Once we saw those two, you have basically all the bricks to analyze and understand which kind of innovation you have in front of you. If you remember then from the syllabus, however, we have still two lessons dedicated to innovation, which are looking at the platform perspective and the sustainability, with the idea of trying to use the concepts of sustainable innovation and the platform in order to give you a broader picture of what you have in front of you. However, still, these four concepts are basically the fundamentals one in which you can understand what you have in front of you. Which, however, it's very relevant mostly for those of you, well, actually for all of you, but then for the leadership and innovation story, we are going to ask you to analyze a real case of innovation based on those characteristics. And so on my side, it's very, very relevant that all of you have an understanding about how it's possible to discriminate between a tech push and a market pool, or an innovation of meaning and a technology epiphany. Okay? So I know that the project itself is going to be mostly tackled by all of you at the end of this semester. So we are expecting that you are actively working on May. However, this is a disclaimer. I started telling this right now, just to be sure that all of you are aware of that. So on the next week, we're going to have the first review, right? For those of you that chose the team-based option. As you know, the individuals don't have this opportunity. It's valuable only for the team-based. In the next days, we're going to assign you a tutor, which means that you're going to be assigned to me, Martina, or Lucio, so one of the three. It's definitely random, and it's just to have you a support on this side. We all have the same level of competencies within the course, so don't be afraid of having me or someone else. The idea of the first review, we are going to give you some details, but it's actually to start to have a look at which kind of potential innovation fields you are looking at, and which kind of interesting companies you could interview and you can work with. We're going to give you a little bit more on detail in the next days, so you can prepare accordingly. I think that you have started to, let's say, analyze some of this field. However, there is, let's say, a comma in this. I know that some of you are having troubles in finding the team members because some of you are not answering, or they are disappearing, or they have been allocated wrongly to the team for a lot of bureaucratical mistakes. Because in order to, just to be transparent with all of you, which is the way in which we prefer to work, we chose to create teams before the final submission for your study plan has, so until the deadline of the study plan, in order to give you more time to meet with your team members. However, this created a problem on our side on creating and recreating teams, because some of you, for instance, hadn't had the chance to have their bachelor degree, so they have to wait and blah, blah, blah. So for this reason, please, during the break, if you are within a team that is witnessing those kind of issue in finding a member, adding a new one, removing someone or whatever, come here. So then after the break, we can call the ones that are not answering, or at least I can have a broader understanding and we can support you in the best possible way. Is it clear? I would like to hear also your voice. Is it clear? Yeah. Okay, thank you, great. So you have a voice. Okay, so said that, let's start with this innovation part. Guys, if I'm asking you, what do you think it's a market pull innovation? What would you answer? Oh no, please, not all together. Come on. Where's the break? Please. Shh. So, is innovation driven by market decision or preferences? What do you have in your mind when you say like market decision? What is the market in your idea? So we're talking about customers, and as customers, what's your idea about customers? Like people like us buying stuff or using stuff? That's your idea about customers? Okay, and then you specify this idea of changing ideas or changing needs, right? Okay, let's see if others have the same idea. What do you think? Do you agree? Something else to, let's say, integrate with this view?
Last time we've seen technology innovation. This is different with the technology innovation based on the correlation with the product in the market. So how we did it, launch the market for and how it's seen on the market.
Okay, so here we are adding, guys, shh. So here we are adding another characteristic, which is, so you are not only focusing on where it is, let's say, emerging the innovation, but you're saying, well, if we're looking at the market, it means that we are also looking at how it is distributed, how it is shared, how it is connected to the last part of the product. This is what, am I phrase it correctly? Okay, we will see if this holds or not, or this holds or not. Do you have an idea about a possible solution or product that could be defined as a market pull? If you think about what is a technology push, try to deduct what is not a tech push. And so maybe it is a market pull. Any idea? Please. Okay, electric vehicles. Why?
There are so much sustainability going around.
And then?
The individuals who are so concerned about the environment, electric vehicles, rapidly.
So he's saying electric vehicles could be a potential case of market, in this case, market pull innovation, because he said, well, the market is demanding for sustainable transformation, and so for more, let's say, less fossil fuel-based machines. and therefore it could be valuable instead so to have an option. And so companies are innovating their own products in order to go to this direction. We will see if this holds. Do you have any specific brand in your hand? So do you have an idea about a potential brand or case of market pull innovation based on electric vehicles? Tesla. Do you all agree? Or do you have an opinion about this? Other brands? So if the idea is that we try to take a lot of consideration about the market, do you have any idea about some brands that have that link very, let's say, thorough and very and adopted in a meaningful way in order to create innovation? Please.
I remember when IBM was born and he addressed a specific need of the market because there is a big conference in a city, USA city, and people didn't know how to be hosted in that city. So starting from a need, a demand, or starting from a market, someone created this platform to address it.
So yeah, we are in San Francisco and it is 2016. And this is also the reason why Airbnb is called Airbnb, because it is coming from the inflatable mattress that offered into that room. So instead of having a real bed, they offered an inflatable mattress, and that's why Airbnb. We will see if this is the case or if it fits into another area. Yes, other ideas, other options, where it could be. If it is someone that maybe is passionate about cosmetics or like all the related part about makeups and whatever, maybe you can find some examples or some cases. In the meanwhile, so my question for you is to start to, at least at the end of this first half of the lesson, if you can try to think about examples of market, let's say a market pull innovation, okay? Just to be all aligned. So this idea of, so the market pull approach, it is positioning as an in-between about two different ways of innovating, let's say, of driving innovation. On one side, as you know, we have the technology push approach, while on the other, we have the design push or the innovation of meaning. We will see, and indeed, I prefer to show you here, that actually we have 4 layers of innovation, because we have also the innovation of the technology epiphany one, which is the one that we will take a look in the afternoon. How can we describe the market pull and how can we position differently in our mind compared to the tech pull push one? So for me, it's very important that you understand this part. So when we talk about the market pull approach, we are talking about a user-centered approach. User is the final consumer, so is the one that is actually adopting this solution. Where, of course, it could be a user in terms of us, like we are using, I don't know, at one point, some of you said electric vehicles, so we talked about Airbnb or whatever. It could also be that the market, it's not the market like us, but it is a B2B market. So then it depends. So we have to stay with the broader definition of customers. Once we understand these, we realize that a market pull innovation is a market that is driven by the needs of a bunch of users that find, actually, they do not find one solution that is actually solving their current needs. And so they find a mismatch between what is happening into the, what are the offers into the market and what are the things that they would like to see and buy. So for this reason, they are, let's say, directly indirectly, willingly or unwillingly, we will see, they are showing to brands that they will like something new. And they will like something that actually fits their desires. So for this reason, what it is happening is that we are shifting, let's say, the starting point, the ignition point of innovation compared to the technology push one. So when we have a technology push innovation, so the up left side, we are talking about a technology that is emerging due to the fact that within my organization, I have a new machine, a new R&D department, a new innovation part, something technologically based that could be exploited, so adopted, in order to propose something new into the market. So, if the technology push approach, it is, as you saw in the last weeks, it is an approach that is an inside out, right? So we try to look inside of the boundaries of my company and we try to launch something new into the market. The market pull approach, instead, it is an outside-in approach. What is the logic? It's because as a company, I try to look outside of the boundaries of my organization and try to spot for something interesting that I could then reframe and adopt internally in order to create something new. Please, this slide here, I think it's quite important because it lets you show one big point. When we talk about, and this is one of the common mistakes that I have seen in many years teaching here at leadership, is that people start to think that, well, we are talking about a market pull. We are comparing market pull with tech push. So wherever I see the technology name within a panel solution, all of you go directly into the tech push one. That's not true. We can still see an innovation that is a market pull that has inside some technological features, okay? The point is, so the relevant thing for you to discriminate between one and another is the starting point. So, is the new solution starting from a technology that I already have within my company? Yes, it is a tech push. Is the technology starting from an analysis that I made within the market and by, then we will see today different tools, but still, is it the innovation starting from an emerging need into the market? Yes, it is a tech pull. Is it clear the difference? Are you following me? So that's why on the y-axis you have the technology. Because more often than not, and we will try to unpack this further on, a market pull innovation, it is often an incremental innovation. Now you know what an incremental and radical innovation is, so I don't have to go further. But then instead, a technological innovation, in most of the cases, instead, so a tech push one, in most of the cases, it is a radical innovation. Because in this way, usually companies are able to implement and rethink something radically different. Because we will see that when you are asking people like us to think about something new, at the very end, what is happening is that some of them, actually, the majority of them, are only capable of rethinking, slightly changing what they already have in front of them. Because it's difficult to understand, it's not their job, it's like they can only see some smaller improvement, while when you are aiming for something radically different within the market, in most of the cases, you have to go for a more tech push approach. Or, on the opposite, for an innovation of meaning, which now you know what it is. We will see that when we are talking about a design-driven innovation, so the one when you are trying to have a radical change into the meaning of a product, but we also add on top, let's say, or in order to reach it, a substantial share of a technological innovation, because we are using the technology in order to deliver a new meaning, well, that becomes a technology epiphany. And this is the other topic that we will see together in this afternoon. Is it clear? So now, coming back to your answers. So when you said talking about a market pull approach, it is connecting to the way in which we interact with the final customers, so in which we deliver the solution, so on. That is not fully true, because it could happen that this is the true innovation. It's in a different way of connecting with the clients and delivering and interacting with them. However, that is not the focus of the innovation. On the other side, so it is true that it's driven by market needs. In most of the cases, sustainable innovations have been launched due to a market, let's say, an emerging market trend. So, to some extent, electric vehicles could be defined as a market pull innovation. You're right. In the specific case of electric vehicles, however, we have to be honest. So there are companies, Tesla, for instance, where in the way in which I know Tesla, they didn't start, let's say, launching electric vehicles because of the market wanted more sustainable cars. I don't think that they care a lot about that side. However, they care a lot about giving a new way of driving, a new driving experience, something else. So they are closer toward that design-driven / technical. Okay, it depends on the point of view. On the opposite, solutions like within the sustainable case, like, I don't know, all the biocosmetics and all those kind of reusable bottles, for instance, within the shampoo or the makeup, or even the solid shampoo, all that kind of stuff. Those are driven by, so yes, of course, you need a little bit of technology innovation in order to understand that you can have a soap that stays solid and still valuable and so on. However, those are driven by the market. The company like Garnier will never change their own way of making shampoos and conditioners if the market wasn't asking for a sustainable one. Okay, so you have to understand which is the starting point. Now that I show you the difference between the two, can you guess other examples of market pull innovation? Please.
For example, in pharmacy, there is a brand you get.
One side. On the last rows, can you hear it, right?
For example, in pharmacy, we have a brand, that makes the product gluten-free, without far from
nickel tested. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that is a case. So at the end, the product itself is not so radical. It's the same. So the meaning is the same. There are some incremental improvements. Yes, of course, maybe they are, I don't know, they make less, let's say, foam or others, but then they are changing. So they aim to target another market, transforming a little bit the product in order to suit the needs of that market, sometimes niche, that they would like to be more sustainable or they have sensible skin, and so they need to. Yes, please. Some over there. I saw some hands over there, or maybe not. Maybe not. Here.
Yeah, micro. So
which one? Ah, yes. Why?
What else was it was telling me this during COVID they switched to production was face masks. Because they had already like the workforce machines that were adaptable. This could be like market food because it was a need. They were able to satisfy it.
So in the case of Macron, so they used to have mostly products for swimsuit, so swimwear and football, so sports in general. So they already had the machinery there available. Then they chose to, instead of stopping completely their production, they chose to switch into another part. So within COVID, we can frame the COVID, let's say, era where a lot of market needs. So in this case, it's not the market per se, but it's the overall environment that is demanding for something new. Then of course they switched again. So but then in that case, within the COVID, for instance, a lot of brands, mostly the luxury one, like I don't know, even Loro Piana or Louis Vuitton, or even the super luxury one, or Maison Margiela and so on, they chose to, let's say, switch their usual production of luxury clothes into a more comfortable and more sporty, let's say, way of looking. So a lot of those brands chose to shift their production, launching sweaters and trainers and whatever, because people prefer to stay at home or prefer to stay comfy compared to more elegant clothes, since they couldn't go to the office, and so there was no need of doing that. So that is also a switch within the innovation part. Other ideas? Others, please. You have to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is your idea about that? So why start H&M, for instance, with H&M Studio and so on? Do you think they chose to start this luxury brand, the luxury branch? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a huge debate about that, because then you have also to consider that on the one side they are launching. On one side, they are launching these high-end, let's say, collections, usually with a smaller number of pieces, in order to satisfy those kind of customers where they would like to be seen as a luxurious one, but they cannot afford to buy a whole, let's say, outfit, a Gucci-made outfit. On the opposite, they also try to go in that direction, the fast fashion brands, since there is, as you know, a lot of sensibility within the sustainable field, and so they try to cope also with this request of reducing the production and trying to cope with a less market demand, because there is a slowly decrease in the amount of products that have been asked to those companies. And so they try to find another sweet spot in which they can still be competitive, but find their unique niche. Yeah, that's one option. Please. Such as? Why? Yeah, then there is also an increasing interest within the broader sports. So usually, at least for instance, within the Italian market, there was Sky that offered the football and the other, let's say, competitions, while inside the zone they are broadening to all the different sports. In a way or another, we can consider it as a market pull innovation, because at the end they didn't launched into the market anything so disruptive, but it emerged since people wanted to have an easy to look different examples. Yeah, so as you see, you have to understand what is the starting point and where are you starting and where you can drive innovation. So the audio is not working, so I'm gonna skip it, this one, but then the idea is that, so one second. So the idea is that when we start a tech push innovation, a market pull innovation, the idea is to try to understand why we can create something that is valuable for the market and which are the kind of needs that they are asking to us as company. So the idea is that we have to comprehend which are the needs within the market that we already know, and that we can take a look at them and adopt it. On the other side, we can also try to understand as a second step if there are other products that are already solving them, and then we have to find that kind of sweet spot when we are trying to improve and work on products that are already there, so to not reinvest everything, but on the opposite side, try to integrate with something new or improved. So there is one point which is crucial here, which is that this kind of innovation, it is mainly happening by, first of all, knowing very well the market that we are targeting. And second of all, it is happening because we usually do what is called an ethnography. So we as innovators within a company, we are capable of looking at the reality, look at how people interact with it, and try to guess what to change. And so that means that we have to observe people and we have to derive areas that could be valuable for them. So in this case, this means that before starting an innovation, we need to know what is our market. This could seem silly, but it's not. If you compare instead with a tech push approach, which sometimes you go there, you explore, and then at one point you try to understand which is the suitable market to fit with. While instead here, the process is radically the opposite. So you start to understand the market, you start to understand the users, and then maybe at one point, once you craft your own solution, maybe then you can enlarge into different fields. Again here, the same disclaimer that I'm pretty sure also Professor Buganza and Professor Bellini did. So here we can talk about the product and services in the same way. So for us, they are almost synonyms. Then the process is the same. It simply differs that on one side you have something tangible and on the other something intangible. There is no difference at all. So what is the crucial point here? Is that since we are starting from a market and we are starting from a specific area, we are doing what is called a human-centered design. So for the double degree guys here, I know that I'm pretty sure that they know what we are referring to. For some of you that maybe already follow some kind of design thinking courses or you're going to follow, you will definitely see some kinds of connection here. So the idea of a market pull approach, let's say it came forcefully from the design field, and we are saying that we are trying to put the user at the center. Try to look at the ecosystem around the user, understanding its connection, the client in which he or she or they are talking with, interacting with, say operating with, and then for each of those touch points and aspects, we try to understand what is going good, what is bad, what could be changed, and where are some pitfalls in the current system. So this is the idea of a market pull approach. So since it is a human-centered design, so the idea is that we have to start from solving a current problem. We are not launching something into the market because we want to. We do that in order to solve a problem. And to solve this problem, the idea is to try to find a way to connect with the user. And this connection, in a good portion, in a good portion of cases, it emerges through empathy and to creating a connection with the user. Mostly, if you have to interact directly with them. I think that some of you know about what is a testing phase and how companies have test their product with real examples. So in that case, we are looking mostly within this area. So try to find a way how to connect with users and how to create that specific bond. If we know that we are into a human-centered design, actually what we are doing is a sort of a multiple path. So we can, on the one side, try to interact with them in order to have insights. The first case is, so the first case that I was telling you before. Then we have a second strategy, which is instead leveraging on users in order to create solutions. So it's no more us as company that we are creating solutions, but we are asking the market to do so. And this is also changing the meaning of a company per se. If you are no more the company that is innovating something, then let's see, what's your role? And why are you operating within the market? And in here we are talking, for instance, about all those companies that are operating into an open innovation field. Like maybe you have heard about the Kickstarter or other crowdfunding and crowdsourcing solution platforms where you are trying to connect the people with innovation needs and so on. So you as a company, you are not doing innovation, you are simply pushing and enabling the market to do new solutions. And on the other path, it's a potential bridge of the two. You will see that next week actually, and even tomorrow, I think, you will start to see that there are some structures as platforms where thanks to data and thanks to potential possible mechanisms, it's possible to enable this kind of innovation. Okay? So, how it's possible to perform a human-centered approach? So usually you have to start with an inspiration phase when you try to learn directly from the people, and so understanding their needs and try to understand what is how your company is positioning with that. Once you, let's say, have these inspiration phases, so you try to diverge and broaden the spectrum, then the idea instead is to enter into more ideation phase, so a pragmatic way to create something. So this is the idea to try to make opportunities, sketches, ideas, to exploit and explore those insights. And then eventually, once you ideate, of course, there is implementation. So try to create something and making the solution to life, which could mean to deliver directly to the market, could be to test it, could be to give to a bunch of potential users that are willing to try it and to perform it. So within this field, one interesting case is the IKEA family competition. So IKEA and also other big brands, they are choosing to leverage on their large customer reach in order to produce some innovation. And like in this case, this was a competition of some years ago when, in 2015, so it's 10 years ago plus, when, so they wanted to offer into the market something new. They wanted to offer new toys for children, and so they said, okay, instead of designing them from scratch on our own, let's ask who are actually the users of those games. And so in this case, so they launched this contest, and within this contest, so they collected the drawings from children, and then the ones that had the higher amount of votes have been actually implemented by IKEA, and they became actually soft toys. So what they are doing here is that in order to find a better fit with the market, they chose to ask directly to the potential final users how to do so. Okay, this is an option, and so this is like the final effect of what they did. Of course, what is the downside of this is that sometimes people can envision things that are unfeasible for the organization. And therefore, sometimes, so you have always to be sure that if you are asking to the market to produce something, then you also must be aware that you are also capable then of producing it. Of course, you cannot then have a mismatch. Otherwise, what is happening is that you're asking someone to do an extra effort, where at the end it's not compensated and it's not evaluated. So you always have to be very fair in what you can, in how you are adopting the interaction with the client and what you're offering. Because otherwise, it's better to go into the traditional way. That's the important part. So the demand here is that based on the things that we have said, why do you think a user needs analysis it's relevant for companies, and why companies have to adopt this user needs analysis? Can't they do that by themselves? Please. Variability of the outcome, in which terms? Mm-hmm. So the idea is that let's reframing in this way. So the market is changing a lot. So it could be valuable to leverage on this point of view. So to try to cope with these different and changing needs, right? Something like that. Okay. Other ideas about what could be why we need a market needs analysis? Please.
Well, comes from back in the day, users were really a problem that the product was solving. But nowadays, the user being wiser and the rule of the user being just like it's doing it without acknowledging it better way. So having a perfect knife, perfect item in your hand, you feel like you don't even need it, but you actually need it. The best user experience ever. Like using, so you do that, you need analysis. You need to understand how to do this. It's controlling it, using it daily, how to feel about it.
And I add one point. So, do you think that all the users are, let's say, willing to do what you said?
Most of them are.
So not all the users are super willing to participate in that part, and we will see not all the users are also capable of doing so. Maybe they are willing, but they are incapable. And that's not their fault. It's simply due to the system in which they have been raised or the way in which their mind works. So it's very relevant to be sure that we have that point. For sure, there is also another reason why we need the user needs analysis. That's not the only one. You wanted to add something?
It's not just the design phase. So we have a partner. We analyze the user needs. Analyze the size of the market, but also like the vertical needs and so we can like, search different technologies we can leverage to like a solution to the needs. It's like similar to the startup phases. So we like MVP, product nodes, and you have a design partner where like, you can like modify this product based on these needs.
So if I can rephrase it, so the idea is that going to the idea of having a product that fully fits what we have in front of us and not going into the mass production. So trying to go into that direction of, and if I can use what you said with other words, it's this idea of going into more customized direction. So another reason on top of the one that you said, all of you, is that as customers, and we can consider us as such, we are becoming more and more knowledgeable about what we want, and we are living in an era in which we are always asking for things that can make us unique and standing out from the crowd. So, and if we acknowledge this market trend, which is no more a simple trend, it's a mega trend, it's something that we're taking for granted, that means that it's no more valuable and relevant for companies to produce in an efficient and standardized way products that are going into the mass production, but you always need to find a way to balance with those niche markets and those emerging needs. And so since we are witnessing to the request of the market of purchasing those customized products, then it is highly relevant to comprehend how to cope with that and how to manage. So this is the idea behind it. And then we are witnessing that basically the large majority of products fail also because they are not understanding these user needs. Because it could be that, for instance, they are assuming that a broader number of people will like it in the same way of the others. Or it could be that simply people, while using a product that they think it is suitable for their needs, they realize it is not. And so what we have to do is to try to find a way to better understand the context, try to integrate better within our new product development these user needs analysis, which means also, if you think of that, if before launching a product into the market, we already test in a way or another that product with the final potential niche, we are reducing the uncertainties related to launching that product into a real world scenario. Because if I'm thinking about if we're thinking about a new startup for dating with the target where the target is university students, and before launching into the market, I try to have some understanding about which kind of needs do you have, how are you feeling about searching for another partner and whatever, then you can better understand that I can pre-customize and preset some of the features compared to others. So I was listening to an interview, I think 2 weeks ago, about she is one of the founders of these new startups called Joy Space or something like that, where basically it's in that case it's a platform in order to support the people in learning and finding new solutions for hobby and recreative space, So she started with the awareness that she had a very severe mental breakdown, and she was working in consultancy. She had two, let's say, burnouts, and at one point she tried all the kind of therapy, acupuncture, retreats, whatever. And besides, she was following everything that the therapists were proposing to her. She couldn't find a way to cope with that. But then at one point, after the second breakdown, she took a break, and she chose to try for something, let's say, a very practical and hand-to-hand, in order to try to let her mind flow by working with her hands. And so she tried the pottery, she tried also drawings, painting, and so on. And she realized that besides she can look at some videos on YouTube, it was quite difficult to find real person and artisans that could teach her how to do so. And in that case, then she tried, so the reason why I'm telling you this story is because before launching the startup, she was one of what we will call the lead users. So she found a need of having this new solution. Of course, she had the awareness that also other couple of people were starting to have an interest in having group activity as a pottery, whatever. But then she interviewed more than 100 persons that through online, through Instagram, Facebook, and whatever, trying to understand, okay, but if you would like to try pottery, for instance, or you would like to work on wood, would you find easy to meet with an artisan? What are the things that you would like to know more? Which kind of images you would like to see displayed? Which were your pain points, and so on. So having that user needs analysis on her case was the way in which she could lower the risk of launching a new startup and be sure that that was what the market needed. Then, of course, we are talking here about an innovation in terms of a new startup launch and not as a product or only a service. So in that case, of course, it becomes iterative. So once you have your seed idea and you're testing it, then you can continue to go on with this market need. In this case, why the example, so this joy space, it is a suitable example, is because being a market push one, market pull approach, in this case, it is not a radical innovation. It is recreating basically a marketplace, and she is not inventing anything new. What she is inventing is a new way of connecting with someone, where you will see it is a perfect example of a platform case. So then the reason why I'm telling also you this story is because this story can also help to satisfy better some needs. And then here we have also a distinction between latent and explicit, and we are going to see in a while. But then the idea is also to try to optimize cost and generate new knowledge that sometimes is difficult to achieve. So if you are the entrepreneur or the employee working within the innovation field, it's a highly, let's say, highly uncommon that you are also the final user of your solution. So sometimes you also need to have multiple perspectives, which could give you multiple areas of adoption of the service or the product. So it's very important to understand multiple perspectives. Another case of market pull is also within the sports field. Usually we have a lot of athletes that they test and try, for instance, the sole of shoes or some technical materials, because they are the ones that are capable of telling companies which are their needs during trainings, during the activities or whatever. And so they are making a slight improvement time by time, driven by the requests of the market. So, and of course, sometimes they are combining also with the new materials, I don't know, the carbon or whatever, to make it lighter, but that comes driven by the market needs. Okay? Of course, to do an user needs analysis, you need to build some empathy, and you make to create a good space for creating, let's say, people into their comfort zone. The reason why I'm telling you this is because then you will have a lesson dedicated, a part of a lesson dedicated to analyzing the interviews. But whatever we are saying here, mostly to create that kind of space where people are free to express their ideas and maybe feelings, it is connected to the three, if you are team-based, interviews that you have to make for your leadership and innovation story. So what you're doing at the end is to try to interview one potential target within the market and try to understand something more, which is, it has a different purpose. You are not innovating something, but your purpose is to try to dig deeper. And this is what usually you do in a market pull approach, try to dig deeper. So the idea is to create an area where everyone can express themselves, they feel free, and they feel, let's say, supported enough to talk and say something out loud without having any kind of restriction. The idea is that you try to avoid any kind of judgment, express open feeling, embrace even criticism if possible, and talk with curiosity and be respectful about this point of view. So the idea is that when you are evaluating the customer needs, so the input that the market is giving you, it's quite challenging. It is challenging because you are always putting part of your mental lenses within this analysis. So you have to try to be as honest as possible in their understanding and try to avoid what is usually called a bias in their analysis. Try to not look within, so try to not see things that are not there, and try to elaborate in a way that is fair to what they are telling you. If the market is giving you signs that they are not in need of what you at the beginning thought of, discard it, trash it, and go for something else. Because then otherwise it's going to be a mess. On the opposite, instead, sometimes this analysis can even say confirm your ideas. When I was telling you here that you have to create empathy and so on, this is mostly valuable when you're face-to-face interacting with people. Sometimes even digitally, it could be good to create that kind of safe space to express. Sometimes we know that we have some cultures that are more, let's say, familiar with this concept of, for instance, for being more hot and warm in talking with others. Sometimes we know that we have cultures that are more direct and assertive, but it's always possible to then mix and match. Then in order to be sure that you can actually leverage 100% the input from your customers, you always have to, let's say, consider the background and the environments where they're in. Sometimes some cultures need a more, let's say, you have to take care of some ceremonies before and after, while other cultures, they don't care. It's very important to know who you are talking in front of. Well, in this case, another reason, for instance, of another example of solutions that are valuable to, so that are using market analysis to start from, if you think of a lot of startups are within that field. So by analyzing the market, analyzing what is there and what is not, they usually find a way how to find a new solution. What is also important is that you have to understand what you would like to search. As you know, remember we saw that we have to search for the sweet spot, for the areas where those needs are emerging. And that area can emerge so in the process of having a specific, solving a specific need. It could be in the product itself, it could be in a combination of. Moreover, it's also important to avoid so to be sure in the way in which you are, let's say, searching and scouting for information, in the method that you're adopting, and it is important also to be sure that you are asking the right questions and you are looking for the right kind of needs. Because what we know is that when we have a couple of different methods in which we can analyze the user needs. Each method is leading to a different input and a different, of course, output. So in this way, what is relevant is that you are sure that you are, let's say, using the right one according to the moment and the process in which you are in your solution and the kind of field that you would like to look at. Okay? So, before looking into the specific methods, what we have to consider is a specific definition, not super specific, but drawing some boundaries about what is a user. So I always refer this user as the target market. However, it's relevant to consider that when we talk about users, it's not only the final customer, but it's a broader spectrum of stakeholders that are connected to our to our product or service that we are launching into the market. Which means that it could be the customers, but it could also be, for instance, the policymakers, the institutions, other companies that are part of the process to deliver the final solution, because we have some intermediaries. It could be a physical or even a store, so the users of the store or whatever. What is important to take into consideration is that when we talk about users, unless they are super relevant and we are in a B2B solution, we are not talking about the manufacturers and the broader sellers. So, for instance, if we're talking about Apple, we are not talking, when we call the users, we are not talking about the franchising shop that is reselling an Apple product, like MediaWorld or Euronics. We are talking about the users like us that own an iPhone or a MacBook. Okay, please. Yep. So in that case, it depends. So if it's a physical product like the Apple that I was telling you, in that case, intermediaries are considered as sellers, so they're not relevant. If instead some intermediaries are, for instance, if you think about a solution for the public administration, sometimes, so maybe you are a technological company, you are trying to, so the final users is us that are the people living in that country. However, you are passing through the public administration. So at the end there, you have one customer that is the one that is paying for the project that has some specific needs. For instance, reaching a broader audience, going to the simplification and the easiness of the service, or maybe tracking our, I don't know, digital information. But then we have also us, people that are the actual final customers. So in that way are the intermediaries. So we have to always consider how it is delivered, the product. Thank you. So then, of course, we have different categories and we can differentiate. As you know, sometimes we have the users that are the actual users, but then if you think about, I don't know, if we're within the pharmaceutical field, for instance, sometimes we have the final users that are the patient, but as customers, we also have the doctors that are, bless you, that are prescribing the painkillers or whatever. Then we have also the pharmacist that is delivering. So we can consider multiple parts if the pharmacist plays a central role and it's not considered only as a seller. Okay. So when we are into the market, so within this analysis, we have to look at the Maslow scale. Here, I think that all of you that did the comportamento organizzativo at the bachelor already, you should already know what this is, right? It's a yes, it's a no. It's a no from all of you. It's a yes. Okay, so we have quite a polar opposite. Okay, by raising the hands, how many of you know what is a Maslow scale? Okay, some of you. While the others don't. So for the ones that don't know it, it's just to be all aligned. So a lot of years ago, they realized that sometimes we had people that, so the people within the market, by acquiring a product, they had different needs accordingly to the product and the service that they are adopting. And they started to realize that it's not true that all our needs are equal, but they are positioned in a pyramidal and hierarchical scale. Why? It's because sometimes we can be satisfied by something, but at the same time, we can be unsatisfied by something else. And moreover, they started to realize that as the users are starting to comprehend more and more their needs and their demands, as we said before, people are starting to be knowledgeable about what they want. They started also to organize differently some kind of activities and requests. So within the Maslow, they started to realize that within our life, we have a set of needs about which we can, and then closing the discussion that I was telling you before, so people start to have different needs also compared to the things that are like necessary to be satisfied, like, I don't know, the needs that are, you have to be there, like, I don't know, eating, feeling safe, and then feel satisfied with your work, and or even feeling, having the idea of being part of a community, so having a higher hierarchy of needs that going from a more concrete and physical to and more, let's say, functional to your life, to ones that are more desirable one. Together with them, psychologists started to even realize that within those needs, we can be more or less aware of sharing with others and sharing with and comprehending by ourselves what we have in what we need. And so the Maslow scale represents a hierarchical way to express the things that on one side, so we're starting from the bottom where we have needs that we are fully aware of, and we can tell to people, and we can express our need of finding a solution for, towards the one that are the latent, in which we are even not aware of them. And so within this Maslow scale, so we have the explicit needs that are related to what the people say, so things that we are capable of saying that we need something. So for instance, if we are commuters within the public transportation, it is easy to say if we have seats that are uncomfortable. And so, for instance, we would like broader seats, or we would like electric stairs, or whatever. Then we have instead the needs that are observable, meaning that for us it's difficult to say that we want that, but through our movement and through our behaviors, you can guess what we want. In that case, using again the example of the public transportation, maybe I cannot understand that what I would love to have is something that holds my head, for instance, while I'm traveling and commuting, because at the end I'm okay, I'm looking at my phone, I'm reading a book or whatever. However, maybe a lot of people, while they are commuting, they fell asleep, and by falling asleep, also their head hurts, and therefore they need some kind of support. They cannot tell you because they don't realize that that is what they want. That could be. This is a very silly example. Or for instance, it could be the button for pushing for stop and requesting the next stop at the bus station while commuting by bus, something like that. And then instead we have the third kind of needs, which are the tacit. So in that way, it's so we clusterize them as what the people make, meaning that even through their behaviors, for you it's difficult to understand what they want. However, by letting them testing, doing, operating with someone, and so on and so forth, they can let you realize that kind of need. And so sometimes you have there by testing, so you let them try something, maybe an MVP, since we said it before, and through that MVP they realize that something is not working. And then instead the last one are the latent needs. Those needs are the one instead that they are even not capable, so we say that they are dreaming them. So they're even not capable of comprehending how to operate and how to make it. Okay? So let me show you different tools to do that, and then I think that we can have a 15 minutes break. Okay? Okay. So what people say so what people say in that case, we usually adopt the questionnaires, interviews, or focus group. So the idea is to try to let the people speak. What is happening here is that questionnaires are usually done, so they are even on paper or digitally made, so people are texting and writing, which means that in this case, sometimes people are very keen on sharing things because they can do it asynchronously, they can do it within their own space, in their own time frame, and so on. However, what is happening is that you are never sure if they are telling you something true or not. Because sometimes it's easier to say, well, I would love, I don't know, to commute every day by public transportation. I will never use my car, but then instead at the first chance that I am, I don't know, late at one appointment, I will definitely ride my car. So instead, with the interviews, the idea is that you allocate a face-to-face moment, either within the same room or digitally, but the idea is that in that case, you can actually see the faces of the others and you can find a good moment for interacting. In that case, so this is what we are expecting you to do for the leadership and innovation story. Again, here you have to make the other person comfortable. You have to find out the right questions to be posed, and you have to understand which are the things that trigger their attention and their willingness to open up. It's not easy, it's difficult, but sometimes it is worth it, because by having this unstructured way of following an interview, because you may decide a couple of questions in your head in advance and then you can do them, you can find a way how to actually, let's say, follow the path and let him or her talk. Instead, focus groups, have you ever heard of? So focus group, they are an in-between of multiple ways. Focus groups are there in order to basically have a bunch of people where they must be a part of the target team that you would like to. Basically, you have there, you let them sit within the same area, and you try to talk and discuss. The idea is that within the focus group, you have the selected people that are very expert, they're very good, and you let them, you pose some question, but then you let them discuss. The idea is that you really understand what the market needs by analyzing the conversation that they are having. Within the focus group, it could happen that I'm telling you, well, but I don't really like, I don't know, the way in which this solution is affecting, I don't know, my life. But then say, yeah, but this could improve something. Focus group are usually very well adopted also into the pharma, into the medical field, because you can have a couple of people there and testing that they tested your product, and then they can talk about it. Focus group, sorry, one disclaimer. All of those methods can be adopted either if you haven't yet launched a product into the market, and so you would like to understand open spots, or if you already have launched one solution into the market and you would like to comprehend how to improve it. So both ways are possible. Clear from the explicit needs? I think they're quite easy and easy to get. So instead, the second typology are what people do. So in this case, we are talking about ethnographic research. So ethnographic research is usually identified as having one people standing in front of a crowd and simply looking and taking notes. So usually in the ethnographic, so one of the differences is that within the ethnographic, you are not interfering with the area of analysis, while within the what people say and explicit, of course you're interacting. You're there, you're asking questions, or you are sending a questionnaire, okay? So by the fact that you are not interfering with their activities, you can have a more reliable way of looking at the system. It's like looking at a movie and try to take notes. One thing here is that, of course, if you're looking at the wrong sample, you may not understand what are the negative sides. Second aspect is that within the ethnography, you should have at least something that is connected to what you are looking at. Within that case, an interesting aspect was when IDEO, which is a very good design brand within that mostly for creating product and some services, they started to rethink about how to, let's say, reimagine the cart, the shopping cart. What they did is that they tried to have a huge ethnographic study by looking at how people behaved within the supermarket. So where you position the things, where you are collocating the different things within the chart, within the basket. And so in that way, the final effect was to be sure that you are having some kind of structure and the parts that could be suitable for their own needs. Of course, if you are mostly for some, let's say, physical products, sometimes for you it's difficult to say that, well, this is the thing that bothers me and annoys me the most. So through this ethnographic study, you can actually do that. There is another point that I would like to highlight, which is that if you are within the digital field, and so we are talking about the services, well, sometimes ethnographic, it's not possible because you cannot look at people that are interacting within the space, right? So what happened is that they started to have, so give me 1 second. So in this way you also have the reference. So, so what you have there is to do an ethnographic approach. So ethnography means that you are not only no more looking at a physical space, looking at what people is doing, but you rather look within the digital field, try to analyze the data, try to look at the different interaction, the touch points, the different parts, and you try to deduct from that possible aspects. Okay? You will see starting from tomorrow and the day after where data can play a huge role according to the ones that you chose to collect and the one that you have, you can decide to leverage from different, very different perspectives. Another thing that I wanted to highlight, as then within the slides you have a lot of details with all of them, is that within ethnography, sometimes it's very difficult to generalize. Because if you're looking at that specific population, you know the behavior of that population in full stop. It's not possible to generalize. The other part that I would like to tell you is that a lot of companies are actually adopting ethnography in order to launch new innovation. Of course, you need to have at least an idea and a brief. And the Procter & Gamble with, do you know the Swiffer? And the semi-wet, let's say, pads where you can add to, and you can add to a sort of within the structure in order to, let's say, capture all the different pollution and the air and so on. So Swiffer started because like they wanted to launch a new solution for cleaning the house, but all the people that they interviewed, they only gave them some kind of insights and whatever, but without having nothing so relevant. But then at one point I said, okay, let's take a look at what you're doing. And by looking at what they were doing, they noticed that one of the most discomfort phases within their face was when they had to, let's say, dry the mop and try to move it from one point to another. So the people there didn't fully realize that that was the most painful part. They always did that. So for them, it was impossible to envision a way to clean the house without having your hands wet and, let's say, being, dirt yourself with what you have around. But instead, by looking at that and then combining with some interviews after, they realized that they could create a new solution for the market that could help you clean the house, but in a cleaner way. And so they reframed the concept, they reframed the problem brief, and they realized that they could also create a solution which now we know as Swiffer, that was a massive, let's say, product launched all over the world. And they realized by looking at what people did. Is it clear in this case? Yeah? Okay, so the last one, so this is the net ethnography point of view. And as you know, so you can adopt in different ways. So for instance, also how Netflix reorganized their own structure with the different roles, and the suggestion was something that was driven by having a lot of people searching on internet about possible solutions. And so the last part that I would like to tell you is the one about the tacit and the latent needs. So guys, give me just the last couple of minutes of attention, and then we will have a well-deserved break. Okay? So why this is so important? Well, this is so important because you need, as a company, we say that the market is becoming more and more knowledgeable about their own needs, but then we're also saying that it's difficult to express them outside of the very basic one. So we need to find a way how to collaborate with them. And we can collaborate by choosing the right one to test our product, and also choosing the right one that can actually dream of. And here we are in the 1% of people that they are not only, let's say, sheep following the crowd, but they would like to outstand from it. And in this case, so what we are doing, we are leveraging is a lead user analysis, the beta testing, which of course is connected to the beta user, and this idea of open source, which I here and there show you. So let's start from the most complex, which is not fully a complex one, but it's good to know. So people, and this is connected to one of the concepts that also Professor Bellini showed you about the overcrowded situation, is that a lot of people are showing ideas and are showing ways of, let's say, comprehending their needs and sharing. And so the point is that the people are not just simply voicing and saying out loud what they want, but they also want to make and be part of that transformation. And so what is happening is that if you remember, so we can map the contribution of people adopting technology. And in this case, what we know is that we have a very small percentage here, which are the lead users, that are the ones that are capable of sensing before the others changes. And second of all, they are also the first one of adopting something new. What we are saying within this graph is that we are expanding the amount of people that are lead users. And since they are expanding over time, we have to rely even more on them. Since they are skilled solvers and they are people that are skilled in understanding their own needs, we have to work with them. However, as a company, it is impossible to hire all of them around. So I need here and there to spot for those good innovation and try to connect with me. So, what's the point here is that, do you know what is one of the most interesting example of a lead user innovation? What is this one?
No.
Snowboard. How many of you are snowboarding instead of skiing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Do you also know how to surf? 1 out of 5, 2, 3. Okay, do we have someone that is capable of surfing and not snowing? 1. Okay, well, we're not so many. 2. Okay, so we have a couple of representations. So what happened we are in the 60, 70 more or less. So we have people like the two of you that loved very much going surfing, and he knows very well how to surf, which is Mr. Barton. And he said at one point, look, but if we can surf through waves and we can snow with the ski, why can't we surf on the snow with the same kind of table as the one on the waves? And so he said, well, we can also we can also skate, so in this way, why can't we do that on the snow? And so Mr. Barton started to test it and invent some possible ways of adopting the surf through snow. So first of all, he put it together to ski and taking them and having his own daughter going downhill. Maybe not a super reliable parenting route, but anyway. But then what he did is that he tried himself. He tried the multiple, ways of putting the boots, because as you know, within the table, you are putting your feet, let's say, parallel. So let's say not in parallel as a ski, but on the opposite way, and you are on another direction compared to the way of going down. So what is happening is that he continued to try, and by trying, he was broadening the market. He was broadening the idea of having multiple people trying the same product. So he gained a sort of momentum within the market. With this momentum, a lot of people were, let's say, trying and improving the product. They were making it better and better. And at one point, so he founded his own company, the Barton, which is one, for those of you that are snowboarding, it's one of the most renowned brand for snowboarding. And then, so a lot of other companies saw the opportunity, and so they made an IP based on the specific shape of that. So why I'm telling you this story is because sometimes one of the most spread innovation can come from users that are recognizing their own needs. So his need was to try to live the same experience and recreate into other fields. The same could happen also, is happening actually within the medical field, and where a lot of people with the prostheses are also the ones that are capable of comprehending better their own needs and cooperate with the broader pharmaceutical field and the medical field, the biomedical one, to create the right products that can support them in let's say, walking or using their hands again. It could also come from some, so it usually starts from people that are capable of comprehending what they want and try to use a sort of combination of different components in order to create something new. Then usually by this, let's say, architectural reshuffle of things, then they craft something radically new because the companies are investing in there, and then so the product is no more a combination of different factors, but this is also how some kind of lead users can start. However, you have to give the people the opportunity to work in that field. Another thing that I would like to tell you is instead about the open source and the toolkit one. In that case, why it matters? Well, because we are saying that as a company, we are no more the ones that are launching into the market something new, but we are relying on customers to launch something new into the market. And what is happening here is that we have to invest into an infrastructure that is supporting people to innovate. Is any of you ever looked at the Nike ID webpage to try to customize your own Nike shoe? Or maybe even on Vans, for instance, Adidas are doing the same. Have you ever tried? Nobody? So if you have ever wanted to have a specific kind of Nike, but then with some specific color or size or whatever, or kind of leather, what you can do is that you can go on Nike ID and you can choose within the kind of shoe type, and then you can mix and match all of the different parts. So you can change the swipe, then you can change the laces, the leather, the color, whatever. And the idea here is that for the company, it is not profitable to launch multiple shades of color for a specific dunk, for instance. But it will be easier for them to let you choose your own color, shape, and whatever that you would like to, and then they produce it and ship it directly to you. Of course, they have to customize something, and they also have to standardize some features, but it is possible, and a lot of companies are doing that. Because then in this way, by having you trying and playing with the multiple things, they can even collect multiple data about your own behaviors and what you like and what you dislike, and so they can craft new innovation based also on that part. Because if a lot of people are asking for something, then they can launch something for a broader audience. This is the same case of IKEA that I showed you before, and it is also the same example of many other companies that are choosing to ask for direct insights from the client in order then to be crafted and adopted somewhere else. A lot of also content from the social media is there for that reason. Then in this way, so they can actually have an understanding about what you like the most and not, and then you can integrate with that. Is it clear? Okay, so I think that if that's clear, we can have a 15-minute break and then we can restart. If some of you have issue with the team, please come to me right now so we can sort it. how it's working. Thank you very much. So I was simply saying that you can self-organize about that. One thing is that you cannot switch between different tutors. So you can switch with other teams in the order within the same tutor, obviously. But then maybe if you choose all together, so send us an email. So in this way, we're also aware of that. Okay? Then on Monday, we will recap what we're expecting to see the day after. So that in this case, you have everything there. So just to conclude this part, guys, do you have any question about that? Or everything is fine? Okay, so assuming that everything is fine, thank you. So the only thing that it's relevant for you to, obviously. Okay, so the last thing that I would like to let you know, and I will present to you in this way, just so in this way we are all aligned, is that in order to perform a market pool innovation, you can rely on several tools that are deducted from the design field, like personas, customer journey, or storyboard are very valuable for supporting you in doing so. I will not go into the detail of them. Within the slides, you have a couple of examples, plus you also have some description about them. What is important for me that you know is that those tools are there in order to let you dive deep into the needs of the market, mostly the personas one. Personas are archetype of real people where you assign them names, backgrounds, needs, values, and beliefs, where in this way it helps you to actually frame the idea about what you think is most valuable for you. Instead, the customer journey and the storyboard so are there in order to map a possible path and try to envision alternative routes that your solution can have. For instance, starting by understanding which are the critical points and the negative sides of the solution. Is it clear? Okay, so if that is, let's say, we are all aligned about this, and within the slides that you can see, you have plenty of examples, a way of using them. Then we can do it again. So then you have all of them there. I would like simply to wrap up what I said at the very beginning. So a user, so let's say an innovation that is a market pool one, it starts from market needs, where it's up to you to identify which are the markets. It's up to you to identify how your company can leverage on them. And second of all, it's fundamental for understanding how they are driven innovation. Would you like to comprehend those needs in order to create a new solution that is solving them? Or on the opposite, would you like to leverage on those needs in order to, let's say, be in contact with those that are sensing those needs? If I'm not wrong, this slide is not currently on Webeep, then I will post it there and update the deck of slides. Then the other part which is crucial is to understand if involving and talking with the lead users is fundamental. The reason why I'm telling you this is that sometimes it's not needed to have an interaction with the lead users, because maybe they are witnessing and they are experiencing things that are not valuable for you because, for instance, they are too advanced and this is not what you would like to send. And so it's relevant always to give you another perspective from which the innovation process can start. Okay? Okay. So the last thing that we have to look is to how to, let's say, perform what is called the technology epiphany, which is the intersection between a new meaning within the market and the adoption of technology. So guys, I'm guessing that here we do have a couple of people that have a lot of, let's say, love and passion within maybe the digital field or that digital sphere. For those of you that have that idea, or maybe also for, and mostly also for others, do you have any idea about a possible solution that could be categorized as a technology epiphany? And maybe also thinking about what a technology epiphany could be? It's a tough one. It's not an easy one. Yeah.
No, maybe the iPad.
Okay, so he's saying the iPad when it was released. Why? So let's try to map in the different points.
Because innovation according to technology point of view.
From which kind of way it's an innovation from the tech point of view?
According to science. Because all the such products in that period are only small kind of.
Okay, so we are offering into the market a physical product that is bigger from the previous one. Okay, then?
In also design.
Why the design?
Because when it was released, the design is not clear. In fact, Apple maybe decided to customers, and the customers choose what's the best approach, use approach to the product.
Okay, so they were more so they had a broader, let's say, structure compared to the iPhone in terms of size-wise. Plus, they had a couple of ideas about how to adopt it, but then they also let the customers open to experiment it about different parts. And do you remember how it was positioned into the market, the iPad? Yeah, when it was released. So was it like sold for which kind of purposes?
I remember it's starting with iPhone and MacBook, but I don't remember.
And then is that so? Yeah. Then we can let's say unpack it. So the idea was that to support you into your daily activities where the computers is not needed, but then it's a way to be also flexible and let's say adopt it into different moments of your life. But then, so we are also saying that within these technology epiphanies, since we saw it before, we are also intersecting within the new meaning. So what could be the new meaning in this case?
New way to use it because it's a new kind of product. It's a tablet product. It's not an idea. It's in the mind of the customer.
So the customers, they were not inventing it. They were not, let's say, showing their interest into that case. Of course, they were showing the interest of using more and more pervasively in their life some, let's say, touch points, meaning like the iPhone and so on. But then the iPhone still hadn't have all the opportunities that a computer could. So that's also a different way.
In the period also the screen of the iPhone is only 4 inch.
Yeah.
Not now it's big.
Yes, yeah, that's also true. That we will see that there is a sort of hierarchy of things that we have to care about. Yeah. So is some of you also interested in other technological point of view, and you know one kind of technology that for you really disrupted the market? Please.
You know, disruption.
Which one? Sorry?
There are some brands that's created.
Guys, shh.
Like the physiological the parameters.
Parameters.
And so is incremental change also green flow was just like this and was just so design. And now there is the intersection of design and instruments. So there is this quality.
Yeah.
And it's also like there are sensors utilized there, and so there is also innovation.
I will prefer to look at it as a more radical one. So the case of the let's say rings with a sensor, it's a good case. I always don't remember the name of the brand, so if some of you recall it, please help me. But then so they started many companies to launch rings with some biometric sensors that are understanding first of all the level of how sweaty your hands are and the heartbeat rate and like also the temperature of your hands. And through them, they are, let's say, taking track of all the different, so all your vital parameters. What is interesting in this case is that, so of course, the ring is the ring. So we're not launching something different into the market. What is different is the technology that they're positioning within and the reason why people are buying that ring. So usually rings are part of, let's say, the jewelry field, and it's like more accessory and to let your, let's say, style look good, or to signal that you are, let's say, married to someone, so with some, let's say, more cultural meaning. On the opposite, those, let's say, vital rings, they have this idea of having people and I was listening to this, let's say, analysis that is quite interesting regarding the rings. Is that they said that usually you used to track parameters because you were elderly and you wanted to be sure that nothing is happening to you. Thinking about all the, let's say, body sensors that were released back in the days to help elderly people and so on. On the opposite, nowadays, since there is so much interest from the market to have this, let's say, connection with which could be your opportunities, they are releasing more and more solutions that are envisioning new ways to support you in taking care of yourself, where you are no more necessarily an individual that is in the range of being critical, but it's rather to support you in being better and finding better ways in which you can improve your health and you can, let's say, train yourself. So usually those rings, as well as some bracelets, are sold in order to release potential services, like for instance also for dietary reason or for training reason. And the idea is that the people are buying that specific ring for a new meaning. But then what is differentiating that technology epiphany with the innovation of meaning is that you can reach that new meaning thanks to the technology. Guys, please. So the difference here is that when we're talking into a pure innovation of meaning, like the Yankee Candle, the product itself is not changing. What we are changing is the reason why people are buying it. On the opposite, when we talk about technological epiphanies, we are also launching a product into the market, which sometimes it's not the best one in terms of technology, but what we are saying is that we are leveraging one technology that was usually adopted into a different field to launch a new product into a new field with a new meaning. And then I'm explaining you all those steps. It's quite, so it could be easy to get the concept, sometimes then it becomes difficult to apply. So please follow me in this path. I would like to start with another example, which I hope that it can help you in understanding what we are saying. Actually, two examples. So the first one is, which is the most basic one, it's the example of Wii. Have you ever played Wii? Right? Have you ever compared within your mind the differences between playing the Wii and playing the PlayStation or the Xbox? What are the differences? Which kind of differences are we seeing in the way in which we use, we adopt those two games and consoles? Uh-huh. Yes.
I control the game.
Mm. Okay.
And instead of play with, I play with my body.
Okay, but then the opposite part is that, well, you also have a sort of joystick within the Wii. However, you are using it in a different way. Other differences between PlayStation or Xbox and Wii? Guys, please, I need you, like, the last almost half an hour of attention, and I guess that many of you have an idea about what could be the difference between the two. So, which is another difference. So, we said that, first of all, it's a different way of approaching the game. On one case, we have the joystick, and we usually stay seated on a table or on the couch or on the sofa, and while on the other, we usually stay up, and we play also with our body. Other differences between the Wii and the normal consoles?
Participation mode.
Which kind of participation mode?
Because usually if you play, it's more like a board games.
Mm?
The atmosphere when you play. For example, also the use of the controller. Because you can share the same controller with the other player in the same room. So, for example, you have to wait your turn to play the game.
Yes, that's true. So the idea behind it is that he used a good metaphor. So playing the Wii, it's similar to playing board games. Why? The point is that when you play with the Wii, okay, you can play it by yourself. And in there you are playing mostly to move your body, and to sometimes they also released games for exercising instead of staying still. But moreover, the main difference there was that you were not only playing with yourself or among a couple of your friends, but you were mainly playing in order to have an interaction with the others. So if within the traditional PlayStation, you can also play online with others. Usually there you play with some of your friends. And so for this reason, Wii was released within the market with this idea of creating a game that could completely change the way of interacting with people. So where there was no more the need of staying seated on the same couch, but instead using the technology in order to find the new ways of interacting with your friends. Why I'm telling you this is that in order to achieve that one, so Nintendo realized that there was this specific kind of sensor fundamental in order to be sure that within the Wii control I can move it up and down, and the television and the system understands that I'm moving it up and down. And we will see what it is. The second kind of example that I would like to tell you is that I don't know if you know, but then at the beginning of each year, there is this huge conference called CES, where they are, let's say, a lot of brands. Guys, can I ask you a favor? Can you close me the door, please? Because then people are going out in this way. Then you can reopen once they are finished. Thank you. So the idea here is that at CES, they are releasing a new innovation, and a lot of companies are presenting their new products. And this year, Lego, the one that are creating the bricks, they released a new kind of Lego, which it is a Lego based on sensors. So it is, from the outside, it has the same shape of the other Lego. However, they placed inside a small sensor plus light, were basically accordingly to the structure in which you are positioning, how you move the game. And if you're even interacting with a smartphone or whatever, those bricks are changing colors and making different sounds. So for instance, if a children is playing by doing, I don't know, the ambulance or with the police car, you actually have sensors that are making lights and they are doing the same sound of ambulance and the police car. How they did it? Because they found out that for children it was not enough to play with the bricks with only the imagination, but they also wanted to offer something new into the market, which was having an augmented and real life experience with the games that you are playing. And that kind of new meaning was possible only thanks to the integration of a technological sensor. So the idea here is that when we have a technology, and you saw the previous week, when we have a technology, we can consider the technology, we should consider technology more or less as a sort of a black box where we have an input, a set of input and a set of output, right? Where the technology stays in the middle and does the magic, transforming some input into output. So when you realize that a technology that we are looking at has this shape, then what is important to you as an innovator is to try to understand which are the set of, let's say, input or senses that this technology can collect and are meaningful to you, and which are instead the final outcome or acts that are creating its own response. Why I'm telling you this is that once you realize that what you have in front of you, it's a bunch of input and output, what you can do is to try to abstract that black box and try to understand if those input and output can be adopted into a new field and lead to something different. So you are usually considering those input and those output within this field, having that overall, that specific outcome. And the idea is to try to see if you shift that technology into a new field, if it is capable of giving you something different. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because, like, we have one of the most, let's say, disruptive component within the innovation field and within the epiphany. It's called MEMS. MEMS is a gyroscope capable of understanding directions from multiple perspectives, so not only on X, Y, and Z axis, but also if you are twisting, meaning that wherever you are using a MEMS within a system, like even within this bottle, and I am moving this bottle, and I am connecting this system to a broader, let's say, environment, I can detect all the different movements of this bottle. And guess what? It is the way in which our smartphones work. So thanks to MEMS inside, we can have a specific location. The phone understands that we are moving horizontally or vertically. It is capable of guiding us through Google Maps, Waze, to, I don't know, during our hikes within the mountain and understanding the different location and position. The same is happening also within the airbag. So the airbag pops up because they added a MEMS, understanding that your car is deviating from the current route. So the idea is that the MEMS they are also capable of understanding the speed of the place where they are positioned. And so what is happening is that if your car is having a hard stop, deviating from the current, let's say, path, the airbag pops. Or even if you have a crash, and so there is a system of, let's say, waves within the car, then the airbag pops up. It is not, let's say, opening if you are simply stopping at the red light. Okay, it is only doing it for specific purposes. MEMS are also behind any washing machines with the different movements and understanding if you are loading it too much or not. Then, as I told you, MEMS is also behind the Wii and the control of the Wii, or even into the electric toothbrush. So why I'm telling you this story is because at one point, the companies that they were operating in completely different fields, as you can see, we are comparing here Wii, toothbrush, smartphones, hi-fi system, and airbags. They realized that the core technology behind the, let's say, value creation system of each of these products were having a MEMS. So by having them, by understanding that what made the difference there was not the shape of that product, what was the technology behind, they tried to guess, okay, but if MEMS, it is creating so a new system for having input and creating output, for what other fields and purposes I can adopt it. And that's how they started to, let's say, investigate and started to experiment with new fields. Is it slightly clear where I'm looking at and the differences between the new meaning? So then what is happening is that thanks to the scope of and the role of this, a very simple technology, a technology where sometimes it is even a multi-purpose one, then you can launch new solutions and you can find new directions. So the idea behind the technology is that so the technologies can offer opportunities which are, of course, not infinite, but are greater in number than those imagined by developers. So this is one citation from a philosopher and a writer that is, let's say, looking within the innovation field. And so he was looking at the idea that we don't have every time to reinvent the wheel, and we don't have every time to find completely radically new technologies. Sometimes we can, let's say, work on the investments that the previous company did, like the one that invented the MEMS, like ST Microelectronics or Honeymoon or others, and try to, or Honeywell, sorry, or others, and try to adopt into different fields. Because the technology itself, okay, can do a couple of things, but if you connect with a broader system, here you are finding new solutions. However, that's the tricky point. In order to find those greater in number than those imagined by the early developers, you should have a path that is guiding you in order to explore new solutions. And you must have within your own mindset and ideas new, let's say, a different lens of looking at that technology. You cannot, say, explore those and obtain those technology epiphany if you are not aware about that, about the fact that you need to scout for those solutions. And that's, let's say, the twisting point. If you're aware that thanks to you don't have to change the technology itself, but you have to change the system in which it is embedded, and you can still achieve a radical innovation, then the game is done and the magic is happening. So the point here is that although we are talking about technology, as I told you, we are not talking only about technology. Technology epiphany is the intersection between technology and the meaning. And the reason here is that through technology epiphanies, we have to, let's say, be aware that sometimes, even if you are launching a very good solution within the market, sometimes it's not enough because the people are not understanding the value behind it. And so it is very important for your company to try to combine those 2 points. Try to find a different meaning for adopting it, and so try to, in this way, try to give some support to your users to obtain those kind of solutions. So for instance, back in the days, we had these, where I wanted to keep the Google glasses because it's quite an interesting case. So what happened is that, if you know, but it's starting from the 2005 that the Google, the now Meta, and then others, they started to test with those Google glasses. So with the idea that within your glasses, you can see whatever you want. So you can see your emails, you can see navigation in structure if you are walking around, then you can even take photos or record. Guess what? It was always an unsuccessful cases. So all companies invested a lot of money in those solutions, but at the end it was a never successful one. Instead, 1 year and a half, 2 years ago, Meta released together with Ray-Ban the Meta glasses, and instead they were a good. At that point, they became a good successful case. Why? Well, because they found a real value of adopting them. So they chose not to have, say, augmented glasses that have only the opportunity to, for instance, taking pictures, seeing signs, or whatever, but instead they propose them as glasses to shoot videos and take photos. And full stop, and no more. And plus, they started to target with those people that actually have that need. So, for instance, influencers and different, let's say, people within the market that are currently working a lot with the photos and videos. They are not so different from what it used to be the Meta, so the Meta or the other Google glasses. However, they found the correct meaning by integrating a technology which is the camera one within a structure which are glasses and usually haven't that specific technology. So those are all, let's say, different examples that I told you about before. Another key point here that I think it's valuable to reflect on is that it is also possible to scale it not only at the small sensors, but as broader technologies. This is another interesting, I don't think it's, however, this is another interesting example, which is it's a Kuga product. So Kuga started as a manufacturing company where they built those mechanical arms in order to support the production line, be more efficient, more effective, and reduce the cost and time for producing machines. At one point, they realized that if that mechanical arm can do those kind of stuff, maybe they can be also adopted somewhere else. So what they did is that they started not only to substitute humans, but to help humans. And the reason of adoption is different, because if you are helping humans, it means that you have to design an overall system that is actually designing different activities. And they are capable of supporting the users from many different points of view. So for instance, it means that you still have the human there, but it is only giving some pieces, or it is like helping the humans where they cannot reach. However, and this will be helpful at the very end when we will see the path of a technology epiphany, is that in those two areas, we are still within a very traditional environment. We are still within an industrial field and still in order to promote more efficient production lines. However, at one point, we realized that if you can use that arm in order to enhance human capabilities or even substitute them, maybe there could be also other ways in which you can use it. And so they found out a way in which you can engage with humans. So guess what? They started to sell those Cuba arms to Disney World to be used within the roller coaster and the virtual roller coaster to support the movement of the vehicle there where people were sitting inside. In this case, the movement of the mechanical arm, they remain the same. What is changing is, first of all, why you're using that arm. You are no more using it for production, but you're using for entertaining, okay? Because we are within those kind of parks and thematic parks. Second of all, you, in that case, you're no more using so for delivering efficiency, but instead you're using for delivering, let's say, fun and excitement. So in this case, you don't care about the preciseness of this. Yes, of course it matters, but that's the reason why you're adopting it is no more to be compliant with some standards. It's rather to, let's say, propose a product, so propose an experience that is different. And to be sure that it is actually, let's say, having that person living their best possible case. And then there is the third case is that once you have basically opened that Pandora base and you realize that you can use those arms also for entertainment, then you can even go further and you can go into immerse with humans. What is happening here is that they are adopting those robotic arms also for mixology and to substitute the humans in making cocktails. So there are couples of bars around the world where instead of having a bartender, you have this digital one, this robotic one where you can simply order and they are mixing the cocktail for you. Why it is like changing? Well, because in that case, for you as a human, it is another form of entertainment. You're not used to see a robotic arm that is, let's say, creating you the cocktail for your Saturday night. So for you, first of all, it's an entertainment. You have a different interaction with the machine. And plus, for those that own the bar or the rooftop or whatever, they are offering into their target market, to their customers, many different ways of interacting. However, all of this is possible only if you do understand what this machine is doing. It is a machine that is taking as input some kind of instructions, and it is having as output a set of, let's say, movements plus some holdings of things. In this way, you can try to ask yourself, where are those kind of outputs relevant in order to do something different? And so in this case, this is the same example of MEMS, where they ask, okay, but if the MEMS it's capable of having as input some movements and changes in the system, and I deliver as output, it's actually an input to a system telling you, okay, you have to go there, there, and there, or you have to change this, this, and that, where it could be relevant in order to experiment and broaden the perspective. Of course, as small as less, let's say, invasive is the technology, sometimes broader is the opportunity that it offers, like the MEMS, it's a very small chip. Of course, here we are talking about the huge stuff. So, of course, also the areas of operation is different. So that's the idea. Here, other adoptions are, for instance, in the healthcare system to support some kind of work field operators. It could be for whatever other areas. So this is the idea of a technology epiphany, and mostly those technology epiphanies are starting because you are analyzing a general purpose technology. So you are finding a technology that is capable of being adopted into several fields, and by being adopted into several fields, you are achieving radical or incremental innovation. In this way, you can have a higher level of pervasiveness, and you can innovate from several perspectives, also complementarities, and you can try to achieve some improvements. It could be, again, both radical and incremental. In this case, this general purpose technology, of course, you can use them because you are buying it, or it could be even licensing or whatever else. The idea is that on top of that, you can craft and mix multiple parts. Of course, over the time, it is like increasing in one way or another. AI at large and some LLM models, we can see them as general purpose technologies because they can be adopted into general fields. And right now, LLM are, let's say, broadening an amount of innovation that they were impossible before. So that could be an interesting way to look at that. Is it clear? So now, if you got the overarching structure of technology epiphany, what you can consider here is that the example that I told you about the Lego bricks, so it's the kind of technology, again, there it's another kind of sensors that we are considering, and which is changing the structure. And you're not actually fully helping you in entering to new fields. However, it is still changing the way in which you approach and the meaning of buying it. On the opposite, the case of Wii, again, is the same because you're changing the way of operating. Another very interesting case about technology epiphany is, I don't know if you, so for those of you that have saw the Olympic ceremony, the opening one, for not the Paralympic, but the Olympic one, if you have noticed, a lot of all the crowds there within the stadium, they have bracelets with lights. And they were playing with those kind of lights throughout the stadium. For instance, also when a new country was entering, they had the multiple colors of that company, but then, sorry, the company of that country. The same also happened in Sanremo. If some of you saw Sanremo, so for the Italians one, also the crowd have that bracelet popping up different colors. If we have here some fans of Taylor Swift, she was also one of the first one having those colored bracelets at her concerts. This is a real technology epiphany, because what is happening is that they're adopting a general purpose technology, LEDs and some sensors connected to a broader system where they through those kind of sensors, people within the crowd, they find a different meaning and value of following the concert. So because you feel, first of all, more engaged, you feel part of a community, you feel part of a broader field, and then you feel even special because you are signaling a different, let's say, path and a different opportunity. Okay, so those are all different ways in which you can look at technology epiphany. Now I will try to briefly explain you how a company can reach to a technology epiphany, because one key point which is quite peculiar is that if, and this is the difficult part, if a company can invest in order to do a tech push approach, I can invest in my technologies, I can do a lot of innovation out of that. If I can invest into a market pull approach, I can invest in user analysis, I can try to look at the market, and I can launch new solution based on that. It's very difficult to invest into a technology epiphany unless you are following some, let's say, tips and some paths, because you have to always combine multiple approaches. So the full, let's say, definition of a technology epiphany is that you are describing a type of innovation that involves reimagining the technologies we said, plus changing the meaning of it, so why people are interacting with it. It is a way to challenge mostly the role of technology. So the idea always starts from challenging the role of technology. If within the innovation of meaning, you are starting by challenging the scope of the product, within the tech epiphany, you are challenging the technology and try to envision alternative paths or even futures, and asking what else I can achieve. As you know, we are within that sweet spot. So within this technology, of course, we are usually entering into what is called an experimental approach. So the idea is that I can no more rely on a straightforward line of investment, because it's not, let's say, taken for granted that if I invest 10,000 today, within that one, I can achieve this breakthrough solution. But instead, I will prefer to experiment in order to uncover multiple paths, among which one, or maybe the combination of two of them, can lead to some innovation. And so in this case, again, the idea is to have the people as purpose, because as I told you, it's a way to give a new meaning within the market. So we are still having a connection with that idea of human-centered approach. On top of which we are considering so the technology as a meaning to deliver, as a means to deliver that new meaning. And then, of course, we have to create a structure that is business-wise is feasible, otherwise it's useless. So the path to create a technology, let's say, a technology epiphany is first of all to start to have of course a technology selection, then we have to develop the technology, and then we have to integrate within the system. So usually this is the standard path in which we are doing an innovation based on a technology. However, if we follow that path, so we end up in having just a couple of options. And so what we need to do is to try to switch this perspective. So usually what we are doing is that we have a couple of options. We try to find the pros and cons. Then we funnel down, and at the end, we obtain the final solution. This is the tech push approach, the usual one that you're used to know. What we are saying here within instead the technology epiphany is that we have to switch the perspective. What we have to do, instead of having a funnel, we need to have a fun approach. The fun perspective means that I start with one technology. I try to envision opportunities that can broaden the spectrum, and out of those extra cases of adoption, I can find a new way of let's say, interacting within that field. So the idea of technology epiphanies starts with, maybe some of you are already knowledgeable about that, maybe not, but then within the project management, which is the way in which you manage projects, meaning it's the way in which you manage innovation, the management field started to envision new opportunities called, for instance, Agile, Scrum, or let's say the Sprint way, in which they tried to, let's say, find a more iterative and explorative way, connecting with that idea of making experiments. So the idea is that you start a project by having a very, let's say, blurred scope and a very broader idea of what you would like to find. And then by multiple iterations and multiple experimentation, you find the best possible way. And this is mostly when you know that you have something in your hands that have an opportunity, but you don't know yet which is that opportunity. This is the idea. And the way in which so it is performed, this fun approach, is to have these three phases. So it's to find the technology, to experiment with that, and then to integrate. When we talk about finding the technology, is that you need to scout for different fields that you think it's valuable. And in that case, one way to do it is to try to comprehend also which are the interactions that your user is having within the broader field. This could seem, this one seems quite difficult to get, mostly at 6:30 in the afternoon. However, the idea behind is that since we are humans within a system that we are interacting with technology, what we can look is that we can look at the people interacting, we can look at the technology, and we can look at the broader context. And to try to find the different solutions, we need to unpack those 3 points and try to understand which are the effects that are driven by technology and which are not. In this way, by unpacking those characteristics, it is possible to see where the technology could be of use of. So which are the possible areas that the technology is offering us. And so once we have that view, our goal is basically to go here. So to go at our right corner, so to go to an iterative approach. And within this iterative approach, the idea is to start from the technology and to find other applications. So we take one technology, we try to look at how people, system, and technology interact, we try to understand the different options, and we try to broaden, let's say, constantly. In this way, so by broadening the different opportunities, we try to enlarge the scope of adoption. Once we have, let's say, broadened this field, and we try to find the new ways that was, we were unaware before. So the idea is to try to experiment with those. Of course, we cannot do with all of them. So we try by selecting the ones that for us are most interesting with, and we try to understand which kind of value they are creating. We experiment by creating MVPs. I know that you know what they are, by even testing digitally with some solutions. And the idea is that by experimenting, you try to understand if your solution is a good one, and that, as you can see, you can go on with your path, or maybe it's a dumb one, and so you have to trash it and start with another part. So the idea into experimenting is try to finding new ways of learning, comprehending which are the opportunities, and in this way, by experimenting multiple times, you are creating a sort of map of the different outcomes that your technology is giving based on the different fields. And so you're pushing the boundaries every time more and more. And so the idea, so in this way, is to try to understand which kind of effects they are offering to customers, which kind of opportunities this experimentation is giving to you as a company. And so this idea is, so you go into an iterative approach to have an idea, try to build, experiment, test, and go on. Just a side note, you will start to talk about the leadership and culture starting from 2 weeks from now. This is, let's say, a reminder for all of us. It's impossible to switch from all of those ways of doing innovation if you don't have the right culture that is enabling you to experiment and to support and nurture your curiosity. So it is important you to know that all of those areas are possible and feasible only if you have the right culture and the right fit. That is helping you, for instance, in cultivating experimentation and testing, like what Procter & Gamble are doing, what PepsiCo is doing, and so on. And so the last step, and then we're done. What is happening is that once you experiment, you are testing different options, you are finding new ways to create value. What you're doing is that you try to integrate within a real solution. And you try to find that particular solution that suits your, let's say, organization, needs of your organization. So what is happening is that if you follow that fun approach, what you're doing is that you start with a technology and you try to understand what is the technology, okay, and what is the field of adoption. And then you start to map in a sort of temporal journey what are the kind of interactions that that technology is offering to your client. Maybe before interacting, I don't know, with your smartphone and after. And then you start even then to broaden the spectrum on the y-axis, trying to understand what are the adjacent experiences that your customers can have, upstream and downstream. Meaning that try to understand which are the areas where that same technology can be adopted and which kind of opportunities it is opening. As far as you go from the current one, you are radically changing the field. As close as you stay with the current solution, you're having a more, let's say, traditional approach. Just to make it, let's say, feasible. You don't start with this from scratch. You have to build it step by step. So that fun approach means that you start with a technology and then you start to understand what are the customer experiences that you are having thanks to that technology. Of course, right now you are positioned in one point, but then you are even, let's say, offering multiple activities, multiple offerings. Then you start to picture other spaces of application of that same technology. And then you start to move your technology into different steps and try to envision mapping different alternatives. At one point, you will see that there is an opportunity. What do I mean by that? So for instance, the camera case, and I think that you all know the GoPro one. So GoPro is a perfect example of a technology epiphany, because in GoPro, the meaning of using that camera is no more to take videos or /photos to, let's say, picture, let's say, the best possible moment in your life to be held within your family portraits or whatever. And the meaning for buying a GoPro, it's not the one for having beautiful picture. The meaning for buying a GoPro is to, let's say, take a track of all your extreme experiences that you had. Of course, then you would like to have a 4K camera that is in high quality, but that is, let's say, the second step. The main purpose is to have, let's say, something that can support you in your extreme events and in your extreme cases. How they end up in finding the GoPro case? So they started with a camera, normal camera, most the one for the movie and for the professional ones. Then they realized that, well, that camera, so the video encoder, of course, can broadcast, because you are having a live broadcast one, but then they can even simply recording, or they can even simply scripting the video and having there. And then once you have broadcasted the video, you can even download. So within the single camera, what you're doing is a set of multiple steps. Broadcasting, shooting videos, downloading, and so on. With that, then the third step was to try to picture alternative scenarios. And what it could be? Well, it could be that right now you are using for video designing, but then they realize that they can also do for movie making, then for weddings and for ceremonies, and then even for sports. But then within the sports, they realized that accordingly to the situation, you might need a different shapes of the shield that is, let's say, leveraging on that technology. And so in this way, so from the normal video broadcasting, then they made the compact camera, where you can use it in order to travel and to record the video. You don't need no more the cable and the overall system within a studio where you are broadcasting. You can simply shoot it, the video, and then download it after. And then they even then moved into a fully different field when they used the same kind of technology. Of course, they downgraded some kind of connections, some sensors and so on. They took it as the essential, where the essential was the lenses and the sensors for saving what you were filming, and then put it into a system small enough to be placed within your head, on your chest, and wherever, where you can do some your sport activities. And this is how you are slightly moving from one field to another, bringing into the market at the end an innovation, a technology epiphany as an innovation. Is it clear, the difference? Is it a yes, a final sign of life? Thank you very much. So, online you have all the slides, then you also have a very small recap about the different takeaways and about where you can start an innovation and so on. After this lesson, I will upload the new deck with also the takeaways. See you on Monday, and have a good evening. Bye. Thank you.